All right, we are live here.
We are live. I get to say it today.
All right.
We're live.
So good morning, everybody. So we see lots of our familiar friends here, and welcome to anybody that's new and potentially watching on YouTube. And actually, I think I might need to do that. I'm not sure if we're on YouTube here.
No, all good. Just record the cloud. I'll get it posted.
We're recording the cloud. Okay, so here we go. So yeah, I'm Wayne Bradford, and this is on Lavenia's Success Mastermind for Tuesday, September 8th. So today I want to chat a little bit about what I call on-purpose language. And language is an interesting thing, and we often use words flippantly, or sometimes you hear somebody say things like that was a throwaway comment. And we've been talking a lot about thoughts and intentional thought being on purpose, etc. So I was thinking a little bit about language and the words we use and how that would support our processing of thought. So looking up the definition of language in the dictionary, one of the definitions is that that language is any system of formalized symbols, signs, sounds, gestures, or the like used or conceived as a means of communicating thought, emotion, etc. So the words we use, the thought that we're having or the feelings that we're having, it's our way of relating to other people and having others somewhat understand the perspective that we're coming from. So when we use the premise that we are what we think, then let's consider our language, the phrases, the words, colloquialisms that we use as an expression of those thoughts. And we spoke a week or so back a little bit, I was talking about the unconscious mind and the fact that the unconscious mind is very literal. Our conscious mind is what filters. Our unconscious mind is very literal. It runs systems, it runs programs that help us live our life and survive without having to think about them. So those are where habits are formed and so on. And Napoleon Hill in his book, Think and Grow Rich, speaks about autosuggestion. So the things that we're thinking that go into our mind and become a reality for us. So our thoughts become real, they become actions. So there's a few different types of language, of words that I just wanted to sort of touch on. And this is a really, really, really big topic. We could probably talk about this for a whole day or more. Linguistics and language and its relationship to thought and expression of feeling is a very, very complex subject. So this is really high level. So the first thing I want to talk about are ambiguities. So there's certain words that we use that are ambiguous. So let's use the word try, for example. And so try basically means, if you look at the definition, to make an attempt or an effort or to strive. So I want to throw that out there. We heard it not so long ago. It was been in the chat. It's been bounced around in this group a fair bit. But our friend Yoda from Star Wars, for all you Star Wars fans, using those very wise words that he had. So Luke is standing. His X-Wing is submerged in a swamp on the planet of Dagobah. And he's learning with Yoda. And he's going to raise the X-Wing fighter out of the swamp. And he says, I'll try. So Luke says, I will try. And Yoda, the full statement is, he says, no, try not. Do or do not. There is no try. So it's from The Empire Strikes Back. And so here's a little exercise for you. I don't know if you've got a phone in front of you or a pen or some little object in front of you. I would like you to try and pick it up. So pick it up. If you picked it up, hold it up. Okay, so you didn't try, you did. I didn't ask you to do it, I asked you to try. So you did or you did not, right? You didn't try. So if you actually picked it up, you did. And I like how Aussies actually say that. So if I say, I'm gonna try, what's the ambiguity? I'm not giving my unconscious mind any instruction. I'm being very ambiguous. I'm gonna try. There's no commitment to what I'm doing. And so I like one way that the Aussies will say it, I learned down under, is when we would sometimes say, I'm going to try something. They'll say, I'm going to take a crack at it. And that comes from the cricket. I'm going to swing the bat at it. Or they'll say, I'll give it a go. Another way of thinking it, just using different words, maybe to express some of the same ideas. And when we talk about these things, I mean, language is what it is for a reason. It expresses various things. So to say one way of saying things is right or wrong is neither here nor there. Really, this is just a way of thinking about the language we use or the words we use to support our thought processes. Another ambiguity is should. It's an auxiliary verb. It's actually the simple past tense of the word shall. Shall is more definitive. So when I say I should exercise more, or those other words, shoulda, coulda, woulda, I could go, or I would if I could. Those are all ambiguities as well. And really what they do is they lack desire, they lack commitment when we use those words. And they reinforce, to some extent, maybe a lack mentality that we have, or self-blame that we have. I should, I could, I would, right? But then there's usually something else that goes with that. So another ambiguity is the word maybe. So as an adverb, it means perhaps or possibly. But if you look at the word maybe as a noun, it either means a possibility or an uncertainty. So again, very ambiguous. So our unconscious mind, is it thinking about possibility, or is our unconscious mind aware of the uncertainty? So the word maybe, I always think of that, how did it make me feel as a child? So you ask your parents, can we go out and get some ice cream? Maybe. Well, I'm kind of left hanging. I don't know what that means. And I know from my experience with my kids, the kids would ask something, hey, Dad, can I go get an ice cream? I say maybe. Later in the day, what did they hear? Dad, you promised. I gave them an ambiguity. And so they interpreted that how they wanted. And that was, we're going to go get ice cream. And many times maybe is used to soften the word no. So there's an intention behind it. So we're intentionally ambiguous. However, what we're actually meaning is something different. So as I said, ambiguities lack commitment, purpose, and desire. So when we're using language, it's just something to think about. Are we supporting our thoughts, things that we're seeking to achieve, the desires that we have? So another type of word are negatives. So in order to process a negative, we have to process the converse. In other words, the positive version of the object in order to negate it. So let's use the word not as an example. If I say to you, this is not an apple, what did you think of? Or if I say, this is a lemon, not an orange, is the last thought that you had orange? So one of the expressions that used to drive me nuts when I was working was people would say, I'm not going to lie. Now that's a little bit obvious, hopefully. But my question was always, if in this moment I'm not going to lie, does that mean you normally lie to me? And if we use the negation, not going to lie, I have to process going to lie before I say the other thing, that I'm actually going to tell the truth in this moment. Isn't it just as easy to say I'm going to tell the truth, or truthfully, than it is to say I'm not going to lie? So some of our colloquialisms and our expressions, they're candid, they're random. So let's think about don't. So if we give the instruction don't or do not. So if I say to you, don't think of a blue tree, did you process an image or a thought that had something to do with a blue tree? So lots of times I remember my grandmother saying things like this to me, don't hurt yourself. I had to process hurting myself first. She could have said, be safe. I've also heard people say, don't get in an accident. Well, that's a little bit concerning that we put that image in somebody's head just before they leave. And remember, what we think about is what we manifest. How about we use the words drive safely? And my grandmother actually said to me when I started traveling overseas, she said, don't you go getting married overseas. So what did I do? Well, I heard go get married overseas. So I married an Australian. And my grandma to this day still tells me that she tells people that she told me not to do that. Anyway, she loves my wife, so it's okay now. But sometimes the words we use give us ownership, or they help us identify with our limitations. And so people will often speak of their condition as if they own it. And when I spoke in Limiting Beliefs a couple of weeks back about the chair, this is my chair. My my condition, my ADHD, my illness, whatever it is, my bad knee, all these things that prevent us. And sometimes there's other ways of approaching it. I'm not saying that that thing doesn't exist. Sometimes the words we use will help us think about overcoming a limitation if we use those words purposefully. So some of the other things that have ownership or identify with limitations are when people say things like, it runs in my family, I grew up in a poor family, I need whatever it is, my security blanket. I need to hold on to somebody. I need lights, I'm afraid of the dark, when they're identifying with a specific limitation in the words they use. The other thing is cause and effect. So words that have cause and effect. And we see this a lot in society, and I'm sure many of us have used some of these statements, but things like, it's not my fault. That puts something outside of me. And how could I reframe that or use different words for that particular condition? I was involved, or this is how I reacted. Things like, that made me so angry. Can anything make you angry? Or is that how you choose to react? So what words do I use when I'm describing that? It's putting me at effect rather than at cause. See what you made me do. If you talk to him, then it's over. So that the if and the then is a cause and effect. So you're saying, you're giving an ultimatum in that sense, that if, then there's going to be an effect. And sometimes that's very valuable to do. You need to do that in specific instances. But there are sometimes those instances where choice of those words doesn't necessarily support our thought. Sometimes people will use other statements like, it's the world we live in. That's just the way things are. Again, it's the cause and effect side of the equation. So are the words that I'm using to describe my specific situation putting me at cause, or are they putting me on the effect side of that equation? Some of the other words are things like absolutes and generalizations. Words like never, always, impossible. So you might say something to somebody, you never help in the kitchen, or you always complain when I watch sports, or some other absolutes like she hates me, or that's impossible. And in the book club last night, we were reading the first chapter of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and he speaks there of actually striking the word impossible out of his dictionary. So he actually crossed it out so that it didn't exist in his dictionary. And so other absolutes we sometimes use are things like nobody cares, or I know those people. And so we're putting generalizations and absolutes out as we think of things. And so how do we reconsider the language we're using so that it supports our thought processes? And so the book study recently had studied James Allen's As a Man Thinketh, and John's often mentioned this in the various calls. And so in the first chapter, I was just going to read a few of the words, and most of you have probably read them or heard them before. He says, a man is literally what he thinks, his character being the complete sum of all his thoughts. As the plant springs from and could not be without the seed, so every act of man springs from the hidden seeds of thought and could not have appeared without them. This applies equally to those acts called spontaneous and unpremeditated as those which are deliberately executed. Act is the blossom of thought, and joy and suffering are its fruits. Thus does a man garner the sweet and bitter fruitage of his own husbandry. And so I just thought when reading that the act are the words we use, and often we use words spontaneously or unpremeditated, and we haven't really considered what we're saying and the effect on other people or the effect on ourselves. What are we saying to ourselves? So, as I said before, the unconscious mind is literal. So the words we use can be influencing the thoughts we're thinking, or the thoughts we're thinking are manifesting in the words that we're using. And some people are of Christian faith, and I was actually noticing some things that speaks of the tongue, and the tongue representing what we speak. In James 3, it says, with the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? Can a fig tree bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. So the words that come out of our mouth and the thoughts that they relate to, I just want to put out there that sometimes we should consider what we're talking about and what we're saying, and how we're saying it. When we think about affirmations and goals, how are they worded? What words do we use to structure them? And how can we reframe what we're saying in a positive, productive, and supportive way? So we could say in an affirmation or in some form of goal that I don't want to be poor. Are those words supportive? Or we could use the words I am rich, bringing it into the present tense, and as we say in the goal making, as if now. And again, the reason for as if now is how our unconscious mind processes information to truly believe something, so that those thoughts become real for us. Some other examples, the words that I was thinking about, so an ambiguity a little bit, is change. So we use the word change. I'm going to change. I will change. We could also use a word like transform, or like Napoleon Hill uses, transmute. So words that become more specific in their meaning, or more intentional in their meaning. Here in Canada, it gets pretty cold in the wintertime, and I'll often hear people say, oh, it's miserably cold outside. I like to think of it as invigorating. It gives me a different energy when I go outside in sub-zero temperatures than when I think of it being miserably cold. When it's invigorating, it gives me some energy to move through it. Last week, we were speaking about the glass example. So that the glass, are you a glass half full person or a glass half empty person? I'd like to propose that maybe that the glass contains 50% of its volumetric potential. So there's other ways of thinking about it, right? And speaking about it and describing it. So the thought that I want to put out there is the words we use are reflections of our thoughts. And so maybe as we continue on this journey, that considering the words that we're using to express our thoughts and emotions have some sort of value. And so I'd like to propose that we consider deliberate, intentional, and on-purpose language as we proceed down our journey. So I'd like to just get your perspectives now on language, and even some of the colloquialisms that we say, or some of the thought processes and how language can support us in that transmutation journey. John.
Hey, I'm up first. See, that's the value of putting your hand up early, because I knew I was going to say something. Wayne, thank you. I wrote a whole chapter in my first book called "What Did You Say?" That was the title of the chapter. It was a question. What did you say? Because the outer dialogue reveals the inner dialogue. And I remember back when I was going to see a counselor. I was newer onto this whole path of personal development. I was going to see this counselor and just talk about my life and, you know, get some ideas and whatever. And I used to talk so negatively about myself. And she said, stop that. If you're going to come see me once a week, you do not talk negatively about yourself. So she actually gave me a command. She was like, right there, I'm going to check you on your language. You need to check yourself on your language, but I'm not going to validate your self-deprecation. So to me, that was a beautiful demonstration, because I mean, I could sit here and keep exposing, you know, what's going on internally. But if nobody checked me on it, then I might just, like most people do, we just regurgitate the same crap that we heard somebody else say. I didn't even like that idea. I got sold that idea, whatever the idea was that I've been regurgitating all my life. Well, everybody knows, right? And then fill in the blank. No, everybody doesn't know. It's not everybody. In fact, it's a couple of people, and they're the exception, right? So why do I keep affirming falsities that some other ignorant but well-meaning person, possibly well-meaning, I don't know, that they sold me? And it didn't serve them either, nor did it serve the generation before them, who also bought that crap, right? So let's look at the words. Of course, Yoda said it best, right? So anyway, I thank you for the reminder. I'm so glad to be here. I'm going to try. Never mind. I'm going to mute my microphone now.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. Yeah, so very true. And yeah, I've had similar experience in just making sure that I'm using the right words and for me. And so each of us have different words that are right for us. And actually, this was interesting. Actually, I wrote down a few things this morning. So thanks, John. Some words that came up actually during Nicola's meditation this morning. Words like express gratitude that I wrote down here. And Jody actually typed in the chat, wonderful words and feelings and from the words that Nicola was saying were coming wonderful feelings, and the power of those words. And then Nicola put a chart up earlier that had at the start of the session that just showed the different vibration levels, but the high point was enlightenment, and the word associated was is, and at the bottom of that was shame, and the word that was associated that was miserable. So is being a very simple word, but again, it's an absolute, and something that has power, but a very, very small word. So yeah, thanks, John. That's awesome. I've got Jody, Stuart, and Caroline. Jody, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Missed everybody Friday. Busy week for me, but amazing stuff, Wayne. The power of words is incredible, and the power is. And trying to connect your outside and your inside, and the way you just tied it back into Nicola, that was so amazing this morning. And it was short and sweet, but incredibly powerful. I really enjoyed it, so thank you. And I think what I tend to forget, and maybe I know it's come up before about loud, boisterous Americans, but we have such a diverse group here, not just around the country, but other countries. And I obviously forgot that. I'd like to make a public apology to Stuart from last week, because I made a comment that, because he was just full of all this energy and just throwing these one-liner jokes in the chat, and I really liked seeing that. And I made a comment using words that I grew up hearing all the time that apparently offended some people. And I really apologize. No, I heard it in the chat, and it came to me privately that are you being mean to Stuart? And I really wasn't. It was a compliment, but words are heard differently, and colloquialisms, and I have to remember that. So this is great. This is great, Wayne, pulling it all together. But sorry, Stuart. I know. Thank you. I would never be mean to anybody here. I promise.
Thank you, Jody. And we know, and that's the other thing, when we hear other people's words to us, sometimes we take them so literally. What's their intention, right? Or is that what's mirroring inside of me? So the fact that they said that, it's striking a chord, but it's because of maybe what's inside of me, not because of what they said.
Right. So,
and
I won't be sarcastic anymore.
Thank you, Jody. Yeah.
Thank you.
Stuart, and then we got Caroline, and then Ivier.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Jody, no need to apologize. I didn't take offense at that at all. I just hadn't heard that term. And yeah, for those of you that are wondering what that was, I think it was piss and vinegar. But as a Lincolnian conservationist, let's say, I'm a fan of honey over vinegar, right? Wayne, you rock, dude. You pick the best topics. They're really engaging. These are things that are really relevant. They can really help us in our lives. So kudos to you for just choosing great topic after great topic on these discussions. You totally stole my Yoda quote from my Star Wars session a couple weeks from now. So we'll get into the wisdom of Yoda, because really Star Wars is full of all these amazing quotes from Yoda. Couple things that springs to mind, right? Thoughts are things. We learn that in Think and Grow Rich and As a Man Thinketh and all these other books that we're reading. But it's true that we don't hear quite as much about how words have power. And I would agree with you, and I would postulate that if thoughts are things from the standpoint of vibration that has cause and creates effect in the universe around us, and then let's say all the particles in the universe conspire to create the picture of our thoughts, I would argue that that words are just as powerful, and maybe even more powerful, because really when we talk about being responsible for our thoughts, right? Last night I made that analogy, John, of owning the bullet until it hits the ground. This concept of owning our words, right? Because words can be empowering, and words can be harmful, right? And I think about some of you scripture folks, is it John 1? In the beginning was the word, right? So immediately I go to the logos, and I go to the power of creation. I go to the Om, right? The cosmic sound of creation. And so when I think about words having power, I really think about the creative power in the universe is vibrational and comes from the word, right? And we don't give that enough attention or take enough responsibility for those things, I think. In Kabbalah, in Judaism, mystical Judaism, you have the Tetragrammaton, which are the 4 letters in Hebrew of the name of God, right? And it's not really, meant to be spoken, right? Thou shalt not, say the name of God kind of thing, because it might unleash the awesome power of creation or destruction, right? We talk about Shiva and things like that. So this just brings up so much for me. And then honestly, honestly, is that better to say than I'm not going to lie? Honestly, I believe that our words are cause, whether we are aware of it or not, right? Whether we understand that or not. And so we might as well take responsibility for the things that leave our mouths. And then I know Koila is going to agree with me when I start dropping some Buddhism about right speech and the Eightfold Path, okay? And so there's a whole thing about being responsible for your words as one of the holy paths to enlightenment, right? And you're not supposed to say harmful things. You're not supposed to say negative things. You're not supposed to make judgments against other people, right? All these things are not only harmful to us internally, but they're harmful to other people. And then in terms of limiting words, we talked a little bit about the words that I like to cut out of my vocabulary. Impossible is one, failure is another, mistake is another, can't is another. But one of the colloquialisms that we use, at least here in the States, and I don't know if you guys in the UK or anybody else say this, but I hear you're only human as almost an excuse for missing the mark, right? And to me, I think when I think of humanity and the divine nature of humanity, that in itself is one of the most limiting things to say, oh, you're only human. Because really being human means that you are limitless and have boundless possibilities. So anyway, thanks again, dude. Great topic, good discussion, you rock.
Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, that's great. So that was just a little foreshadow, a little advertising for your session. Really looking forward to that, to that session. And, you're just talking about the spiritual side of that and that limitation thought of being only human, but, even in that scripture that I quoted this morning is that who have been made in God's likeness. Therefore, we are not saying we are God, but we have the potential that God created in us or gave us, which is godlike, right? Those words that support that belief of being able to sort of have, to exercise that potential that was given to us rather than treat it as a limitation. Thank you. Caroline, Ivier, and then Nicola. Go ahead, Caroline.
Hey, hi everyone. I've missed a couple of days because I've been away this weekend, which is quite nice after all the COVID lockdown. So I was down south for a few days. And so just a couple of things to say that I really enjoyed everything you were talking about, Wayne. That was great. Good reminders. And for me, the one thing that I wanted just to highlight was the thing around the subconscious working in positive. So when you put a negative in, it has to translate it. This is something I was really first made aware of when I was bringing up my son when he was little. And it was flagged up that, don't say to your child, don't hit so-and-so, don't put that thought in there. And it was a really useful parenting tool, but so many people were just unaware of it and they would constantly discipline their children with negative commands. So, I think that's really important because often children are like, well, we're telling them to do something basically, even though we think we're telling them not to do it, we're actually subconsciously telling them to do it, which is kind of unfair to be cross with them. And then when you mentioned someone, I wasn't on the call, but someone being offended about the words, it made me think of a great book by, is it Don Miguel Ruiz, called The Four Agreements? I don't know if people are aware of it, but it's a powerful book. And one of the 4 agreements is don't take anything personally. And that's kind of the underpinning thing that, whatever anyone says about you, it's generally about them. That's a simple truth. So that's a really good book to check out as well. And on one of the WhatsApp groups today, someone had a link to this YouTube video, which is Denzel Washington speeches. So I posted it on our John Lavenia Mastermind page, because I just think what he was saying was just awesome. I don't know if other people know some of this. He generally does speeches to graduates coming out of, I think it's Pennsylvania University. And wow, he just says some amazing stuff, some really wonderful stuff. So if anyone wants a bit more inspiration after today, then check that out. It's 11 minutes long, and I think it's from like half a dozen different speeches, but it's really lovely. And one last thank you to everyone, because I think I'm realizing, maybe I've just been a bit slow to recognize it, but I'm just realizing just how amazing all us people are on this platform. And I've been listening to, well, quite a few of you, but recently, and I've just been in awe about the generosity of wisdom and knowledge that people are sharing and passing on without any feeling of competitiveness or, you know, holding back. So yeah, I think we're in a very privileged position to be able to give and receive of our talents on this platform. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Caroline. Yeah. Actually, this is not to point out something you said, but I came across a school of thought about the difference between subconscious and unconscious as being two words to describe that part of our mind which we're not consciously aware of. And again, just in the use of those words, sub meaning sometimes less than. So the choice to use unconscious in the school of thought that I came across versus subconscious. Just as a way of thinking. It's not saying that one way or the other is right. It's just, again, the use of words and how we use them and what they potentially portray or have the potential portray. So that's very great. I appreciate you sharing all that.
Thank you.
We've got Ivier, Nicola, and Debbie.
Thanks, Wayne. Just please tell us, when are you going to start this next career as a late show radio host, reader of children's books, podcaster extraordinaire? When, please? Because it doesn't matter what subject matter you take, you can pull everyone along with you, and without illustration. I mean, we can picture everything in our minds as you speak. I mean, is that a gift or is that a gift, people? Please, can you encourage this man and tell him to get started, please? You already have a following in us.
Yeah, I have started Ivier right here.
Oh, but you need to like make this wider, more accessible, more available. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. Oh, so thank you. I think as I heard you talk, I mean, I feel and I believe that words can make the difference, especially in our formative years. So as children, you know, what we hear from, you know, older people, whether it's parents, grandparents, you know, uncles, aunts, cousins, whatever, that speak into our lives, you know, whoever is influential or has any amount of responsibility towards us. And that creates, I think, the tape that plays as we come into our own as adults. And it's only when we know better from exposure to things like this mastermind group, and, you know, the books that we now know to read, and, you know, the kind of podcasts and people will follow on Facebook or wherever, that we can start rewriting the script. But words are powerful, and they can, you know, either set you up for success or failure. I mean, you know, they can be so damaging that for quite a few years, you continually make wrong decisions purely from the point of what tape's playing. And so until that core script is rewritten or revised, you can carry on doing that. And you can get to the end of however many years lifespan you got to realize that you never really did what you should have done. So that was what, you know, came up for me. And I think as we start our Kids Corner, I'm just wondering if part of what we do with them isn't to create a space, you know, where we speak life-giving words, we speak, you know, affirmative words into their lives, so that, you know, while they're being, because I don't think they're teens yet, and so before they get to those really, really impressionable ages, we can kind of like set their minds, you know, to be receptive, and therefore program them in a way so they've got, you know, more of a chance of success earlier on than some of us, you know, on this call. So that was one thing that came for me. And then even now that we know better, we need to be intentional in the different spheres of life. So not just, with business people, not just with the family that we have on here, but in our smaller communities, whether it's our nuclear families or, extended families at Thanksgiving or at Christmas. We need to, practice this and, influence our circle of influence, I guess is what I'm trying to say, so that perhaps we can make this contagious, so we can affect and have an impact on our community. So, I'm the first of 6 girls. And I find now that because of everything that's going on here, when I speak to them, even though they come up and I can tell that they're in a dark space or, they're a bit down about something or the other, I try to make sure that whatever my contribution is, I flip it on its head. And so I try and bring the positive energy to whatever is being discussed. Yes, not negating that what they're going through is, is real and it's hurtful or whatever, but try and get them to see another perspective. So if we take this out of this forum and, choose to be the change that we want to see in our various, micro communities, then maybe this can get some kind of collective force and make a change. So it's great that we have this here, but let's be intentional about taking it further. So thanks, Wayne.
Thank you, Evia. Yeah, some great thoughts there, and just some coaching models that I've come across over time. Sometimes what we're expressing is our belief on what somebody else should do. So again, expressing our thoughts, but we're trying to put it onto somebody else. Sometimes the best way to help other people is to ask them questions and let them come up with the words themselves, right? So in that coaching perspective is, how do you approach a specific thing rather than saying you should do it this way? Because again, there's that ambiguity that we put into it, right? Would you mind if I just drew attention to a couple of words you used? Is that cool?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it was interesting. I heard 2 words that popped out at me: not negate. Interesting. Right? A double negative right there. So. Thank you. Nicola, Debbie, and then Bill.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for that, Wayne. I think we could probably all sit and listen to that for a whole day. It's such a vast subject, isn't it? It's so powerful. You just made me realise, just thinking of, we're not, like, as you say, we're not conscious all the time in our choice of words, but there's one thing it just made me realise that I do. And I kind of play a bit of a game with myself. So there's certain phrases, I'll use this one as an example and see if you had the same impact to you. So I'll reword things because I think it gives a different feeling to me. So it's probably, I don't know if that's kind of classed as reframing or not, but the one obvious one, which I do every day, is I'll not use the term a to-do list. So I don't know how that feels to everyone else, but as soon as I say the words, it needs to go on my to-do list, it just brings up certain feelings, and the main one is kind of anxiety, stress, the length of the list, how am I going to get it done? It just, all those kind of feelings. So a while back, I chose to change this. Well, this is making me sound like a right lunatic, but I've changed the name of that to a how can I serve list. So what goes on my list, it's just a different perspective in my mind. When I'm then writing down what I need to do in that day, I think of it from the perspective of how am I serving? And I just get a whole different feeling about what's on that list and how I then need to go about completing that list for the rest of the day. So I don't know, that might just be an insight into my strange, bizarre brain, but I've just realised listening to you, I do that in quite a few different ways. So I'll kind of rename things. And the one other one, which has been in my mind for quite a few years, but it's the first time I probably shared it with anyone, but I'd just be curious to see if everyone agrees. But the one big one for me is the word mental health. I think it has a certain set of connotations attached to it. It's obviously changing a lot more now than it ever has done in previous times. But I just think if that was renamed to mind health, for me, that has a whole different feeling around it. And I'm sure, I don't know, I think people would be more inclined to use that term in a different way than mental health. So thank you for that. It just brought up a few feelings, thoughts. So yeah, good, really good subject. Really good subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. And a little reframe for you in what you call your list. I would call your thought enlightened. It works for you, right? So the use of words that work for you in supporting your thought processes. And yeah, I agree with you on the mental health, mind health perspective, particularly. And I mean, the word mental is not specifically a negative word, but there has been stigma attached to a word over a period of time. Mm-hmm. So I've got a fair bit of experience with what is now called the mental health unit in one of our local hospitals, which is a story for another day. But it used to be called a psych ward, and psych ward had stigma. So then it became called a mental health unit, different set of words to describe something. And over time, because it was more positive, but over time, stigma has moved from one set of words to the next set of words, right? So it's just interesting how societally, and typically that's a societal stigma, and as awareness raises on a specific set of words, I mean, even in workplaces now, the whole concept of mental health or mind health is becoming more open. Therefore, the stigma is less now than it was 50 years ago because of a raised consciousness and a raised awareness, and not always necessarily in the ways that they approach it, but certainly in the global collective of thought around a specific form of words or set of words. So thank you for sharing those thoughts. Debbie, Bill, and then Koila.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Wayne. Great topic. And thank you, Nicola, too, because my daughter has been going through, trying to keep a handle on her mental health. And I had that conversation with her, too. I said, maybe you might want to consider renaming it because even though it does not have as bad a stigma as it used to, it still has a connotation to it. So I like what you suggested. I'm going to throw that out at her. So thank you for that. But what brought to mind to me is funnily enough, had a conversation with this man and his little child this weekend, and he was, the little boy was getting ready to turn 2, and we were talking about the terrible twos. And when my daughter was turning 2, I just hated that. And I just really hated that term, because I think when you call it, the stage terrible twos, you can subconsciously treat them as terrible children. And they're acting terrible. And I never liked that term because they really aren't terrible. They're just trying to they're just going through a stage where they're trying to communicate, and they don't have the, full use of words like we do as adults. So they cry, or they scream, or they don't know how to communicate other than having those moments. And mind you, my daughter had them, but I never looked at her as being a naughty or terrible child. It was just, I had to figure out how to handle that behavior as she grew through that stage of learning how to communicate with me. And it's like, like you were saying, we've gone through society to call that twos, terrible twos. And I think we should start renaming some of these things that we just naturally or subconsciously do, because it could subconsciously lead to a type of behavior from your point of view that you don't even know you're doing. So I appreciate you bringing up this topic, and thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you, Debbie. Yeah, it's interesting. There's another group of words that I didn't touch on. There's been words that become labels, and we start to identify back into that identifying with limitations. So again, as we speak, I guess, to others, being conscious of the words we're using, just so that we're not putting labels on them that are our own impressions that they may interpret as something that belongs to them. Thank you, Debbie. Bill, Koila, and Glenn.
Good morning, everybody, and good evening for the rest of us. And I guess if you don't know what time of day or night it is, you just are awake all the time. Yeah, on mental health, just quickly, I have always thought it should be called brain health or something like that, because after a while it does become stigmatized. But having had to put up with that, I don't really worry about it. But I'm going to turn things around slightly. And words can be used in many different ways, particularly with our own families or with people we have to deal with directly. And it's not a case of choosing things to say to hurt people or that. And I know Glenn, and I'm not stealing his thunder, pointed out earlier on, you know, words are words. It doesn't matter what the word is. It's your perception of the word and how it's used. A quick story about words being used wrongly would be when my daughter was 5 at her first year in primary school. A young lad in the classroom had decided it was good to bully her, and she came home and told us and that. And I says to her, well, if he bullies you again, just pointed to her nose and says, just you biff him right there in the point of his nose. So Julie, the next day, she did so. And the young fella didn't come near her. But she was explaining this to her mother, my wife, who informed her that violence doesn't work, Beth. But Beth turned around and says, well, Daddy says it does. But that's an interpretation of the words that I used and obviously the guidance that I gave, maybe rightly or wrongly. But certainly in my job previously in the police, words were very important, because I could be at a situation or a scene where the wrong word could end up in absolute mayhem and lead to death, never mind anything else. So you had to choose your words correctly. You had to stop and think before you opened your mouth. Now, thankfully, I've always had the knack of being able to think pretty darn quickly, particularly in dangerous situations or bad situations. And for the use of the words in any situation, I've maybe, you know, you might have to have run after somebody and your adrenaline's up, sometimes the red mist's down, you're focused like a hunter on this particular target, etc., etc. But a colleague of mine once said to me, look, when I arrive, you and him are nose to nose, ready to punch the lights out of each other. And that's another saying just for Americans, I'm sure you can grasp the idea. And he says, and then the next thing, the two of you are laughing and shaking hands, even though you're arresting them. And I says, well, that's the use of words. That's how you can use your language and turn it around to calm the situation down. First initial reaction is giving off to him because he's made you do something that you don't want to be doing. But then when you take a breath and start, then you can bring the person back around. It's maybe not a great trick, but it certainly worked for me. Kept this bit not so badly bruised. So yeah, thanks for that, Wayne. It was really good. Enjoyed that.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you. Yeah. So, very quick question for you. And I think I have a pretty good idea of the answer, but in those heat of the moment situations, would you use ambiguous language or very specific language?
Oh no, it's very specific.
Yeah.
Pointed.
No, good. So yeah, and that's the thing. We sometimes become very ambiguous when there's no pressure.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah,
when there's
pressure,
we become much more specific. Exactly. Yeah, thank you. So we're actually about 12 minutes to the hour. There's lots of hands up here, so I'm just being conscious of time here. Let's move on to Koila, and then we've got Glenn and Cyril.
Hi there, and thank you. Can you hear me? Because I haven't got my microphone on.
Yeah, we sure can. Yeah.
Really good. The thing that came up for me, and I saw somebody put it in the chat, I think it was Kim, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. And that is just such tosh, always been tosh. And our words, well, words can lift us up, or they can bring us down, or they can even kill people. And why we use that saying with my children, I have no idea. It's just bizarre, isn't it? It's just never been true. We all know how much words can hurt, and we all need to be aware of the words that we use so that we're not causing hurt to other people unnecessarily, and so we can build people up if we want. And this is for something for Stuart, who was talking about Buddhism, and it's a positive string of words from the Upanishads, and it's one of my favorite positive things. In the city of Brahman is a secret dwelling, the lotus of the heart. Within this dwelling is a space, and within that space is the fulfillment of our desires. What is within that space should be longed for and realized. As great as the infinite space beyond is the space within the lotus of the heart. Both heaven and earth are contained in that inner space, both fire and air, sun and moon, lightning and stars. Whether we know it in this world or not, everything is contained in space. Never fear that old age will leave. Never fear that this inner treasure of all reality will wither and decay. This knows no age when the body dies. This knows no time when the body dies. This is the real city of Brahman. This is the self, free of old age, from death and grief, hunger and thirst. In the self, all desires are fulfilled. We should remember who we are. And I think it's really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Koila. Yeah. It's interesting. There was a study that I was made aware of by a doctor out of the States who spoke at a conference I was at, who said that the same areas of the brain light up when they have an EEG or ETC or whatever the correct term is for the items that they put on your mind to measure their brainwave activity, is that emotional pain triggers exactly the same parts in our brain as physical pain. So very much true about the sticks and stones that you said.
Yeah, and also, you know, very often if people have lost somebody, it's actually like having a bit of you ripped out. So that just is to underline what you just said, really.
No, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay, Glenn, Cyril, and then Edward.
Can you hear me all right, Wayne?
Yeah, I've got you there, Glenn. Yeah.
Yeah, I know my camera is off. There's a reason. This is a really interesting topic for me because I've always been a great believer in the power of words. And I'm not going to say too much. I actually need to get off rather quickly. I've got a client meeting. I've always hated the word impossible. Absolutely despise that word. Always have. But because that word to me, more than any other, takes away, it can have the effect of taking away my power, taking away my ability to affect and change my own circumstances according to my desires. So I heard a saying a while ago, said that anything is possible. The impossible just takes a little longer. Now, having said that, I'm just curious. I made a promise yesterday. Remember, I put myself on blast. Would anyone like to see my office?
There's some things in the chat there, so I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Yes, please.
Yep, let us see.
Move that, boss.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, where's that
Okay,
corner?
now, hold on
Make
now.
some noise. We can't see it unless you're talking.
Now, lest somebody suspect that all I did was shove everything in the closet and close the doors.
That's what I thought.
Oh my gosh!
Found my stuff.
It's a miracle!
Can we see your hallway?
Found my stuff. See that? Check it out.
Well done.
Found my stuff.
Oh, done.
Yes. John Lavenia. How do you spell perfect? Right? D-O-N-E.
E.
Hey, listen, guys, I got to run. Fabulous subject, Wayne. Really, really. The words we use. The comment that I put in the chat about words are words. I believe it to every fiber of my being. In almost every case, in my personal case, words have the meaning that I choose to attach to them. So I choose positive words, uplifting words, and I also choose positive and uplifting meanings. So, thank you guys. We'll see you very soon.
Thank you, Glenn. Good work there. Thank you. So thank you. Now we've got Cyril, thanks, and then Edward and Janet. Are you there? Cyril?
Hi guys, sorry. Hold on. Sorry, hold on a second. I just had can you hear me all right? Can you hear me all right? That's it. Got it.
I hear you, but there's feedback.
Yeah, I should have just got rid of that. My apologies. This brought up something for me because I thought about this particular topic for quite a while from the point of view of when I started meditating and the use of affirmations and stuff and self-hypnosis. And I wrote a poem in about 1995 that kind of sums it up from the perspective of a child. And if you don't mind me, it's very short, so it won't take long. It's called A Beautiful Empty Book. There's a beautiful empty book born every minute. There's a beautiful empty page born every second. And every spoken word that is presently heard is printed for better or worse, every chapter, line, and verse. And so my story's done. Sorry. It's just the fact that it had dawned on me that it takes the enlightened mind to know to know that the words we speak and the words that are spoken to us are often imprinted, and unless we as adults, or at least we empower the child to see through it as well, but that's difficult because then do they take you seriously? But from our point of view as adults, we need to do that because the words we say to ourselves can be so powerful without even thinking about it, and hence your topic today, which is great. And I commend you for it. Great topic. Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Cyril. Yeah,
did you hear that all right?
Yeah, I heard that. So thank you. No, that's great. And you know, that book is interesting because I think we, as we grow, sometimes forget that there's a new page that we can turn and we can write new words on that new page. And so in talking about words today, also knowing that our book is a work in progress. And so we'll turn the page and write new words. Edward, Janet, and then Jane.
Thank you, Wayne. I think I need to get in touch with you and learn a few tips from you. That presentation is, your presentation abilities are quite great. I'm really impressed. I thought I should say a few things because I've been reflecting on your topic and myself and my life. I do agree words really make a difference, a big difference. And the thoughts that come, the thoughts behind those words really influence what words come out of our mouths. In some management language, they say effective communication is about more than just exchanging words or exchanging information, and it's only effectively complete when the other person, the recipient, has received the message that the sender has intended to send. So it's very true, as Glenn said, that we have a choice of what meaning we attach to the words we hear. But unfortunately, not all of us exercise that power. And different people really pick up different meanings based on what they have heard. In my little village where I grew up, there was a saying, literally put, that bad drunken word that a drunkard would say to somebody, the liquor already found it in the heart of that drunkard. So it's not the liquor that is saying the word. The word is already there, and the liquor is only giving what they call Dutch courage to the drunken man to say the word out. It's very, very interesting because maybe I should point a little about my language scenario. English, I think, is my fourth language because I was born of a mother who came from a different place and a father who came from another different place. So they spoke two different languages and they raised me up in a place where the language was completely different to theirs as well. And then I learned English on top of that. Then I went down to South Africa and lived there and married there. Wayne, I picked a leaf from your book. I married there. So my kids then began learning a language that is completely different to mine or any other languages that I've picked up. And I had a chance to read James Allen a few years ago. And in the profession that I work, it's very important, like Bill said, to be explicit with the communication that you give. So it's necessary to stop and think a little bit about what you say. Now, with my language background, my language issues, it's even more important for me to think about what I need to say so that I make sure the message is conveyed, the proper message is conveyed to the recipient. So it's true, we have to be purposeful in our use of words. And I'm appreciating that a lot more even now as we go through this topic. Thank you very much, Wayne.
Thank you, Edward. Thanks so much for sharing all that. And you know what you said about the liquor. The liquor just removes the filter. So again, the thoughts that are there, right?
It's a good one.
Thank you. And you know, you're talking about your children learning another language that's not yours. So you know, they move into new words and new ways of expressing. And so actually, you know, even as we change or transmute in our journey, sometimes it's about finding those new words of expression, right? So yeah, thank you. Fantastic.
Thanks.
Janet, and then John, and Toyin had asked about maybe saying, so we got maybe a few minutes here if we're quick. So thanks, Janet, and then John.
Thank you, Wayne. I'll try to be very quick. I'll try to be. So try to is one of the words, phrases that I've grappled with for a long time. I studied Jinshin Jitsu, which is one of the healing modalities that I am learning and have been studying for many years. And try to is something that we are not supposed to say. And I was, well, but I am trying. I'm trying really hard. And it's something that has been difficult for me to change. Until recently, I found out that it's an expression of lack. And that's something else that I've been working on. It's expression of lack. Oh, trying. Okay, so when we started this journey that brought most of us together here, I rephrased it as I am working on, or I am in training for, rather than I'm trying to learn. And so hopefully that gives it more power. And so thank you for that. And the other thing, my least favorite word, John has done as his favorite word. My least favorite especially when I'm teaching my adult calligraphy classes is can't. My students will say, I can't this, or I can't that. And I never let that ride. I always say, please rephrase that is, I'm having trouble with, or I don't understand something, but to say I can't, right, puts up a barrier, and do you hear anything past that? So that's something that I don't allow in my classroom ever, and don't allow in my life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet. Yes, thank you very much. That's another another word that's potentially very dangerous, isn't it? Yes. And when you talk about trying, it just popped in my mind there too. Why do you think doctors call it a doctor's practice? So just another word choice rather than trying, like trying to understand the human body, practicing to understand the human body. That's great. Thank you. John, and then Nadine has his hand up too.
Well, I'll start off with with doctors, the last thing you want to hear them say is oops. So, but getting back to the topic, a couple of things was one of the things I used to do with new team members on my team that I always used to talk to them about, what their job responsibilities were and how I could help them, and that the door was always open. But I also went into, I've got a different dictionary from you, and so words are going to mean different things in your dictionary than they do to my dictionary. And so if we've got a communication problem, we need to work through that. It's almost like two foreign languages because of your life experiences versus my life experiences and the weight that those experiences put on certain words. The next thing, and I know Glen's already left, but I'll talk about the word impossible. He said he hated it. I always looked at it as people that use the word impossible have no imagination. And my little story about that goes back to when I was a very young kid and watching TV, and I'll date myself here. This is like the time of Leave It to Beaver. And so there was a comment on a show, and it wasn't necessarily that show, about things that were impossible. And somebody said, oh, nothing's impossible. And the guy said, oh, yeah, it is. It's impossible to get the toothpaste back in the in the holder. And these are the days when it was like a tin holder we used to roll it up. And I remember thinking that at the time, I was probably 6 or 7, and I'm like, no, there's a way to do that, and I just like as soon as I realized that, I went, okay, that word's out of my vocabulary. I mean, I didn't think about it that way at 6, but it was definitely one of those things where I'm like, no, nothing's impossible. You just have to, dream large about how you're going to do it. That's all I got.
Yeah, very true. And what's awesome is when you're inspired because of somebody else's belief in lack or limitation to find the way around. So that's a really cool story. Thanks. Adine. Are you?
Oh, sorry. I just.
There you go. There you are.
I missed the first part of your before, and I don't know where, but enough for me to understand. Is a great topic. The thing about the power of the words are great, but unfortunately, as parents or us, we don't maximize the power or the meaning of words as such. Talking about because something is about biological. For example, the brain works in pictures, and maybe a lot of people are aware of this. If I tell you, for example, it's very apparent with children anyway, I'm gonna tell them, well, don't sit in front of the TV, and what they're gonna understand, because the brain works in pictures, sit in front of TV, not. And they realize like they don't have to sit on TV, or they don't need to sit in front of TV. I'm gonna ask you, don't think about a red flower. Your brain is gonna think about the red flower first before he realizes that he's not gonna do that, or you don't have to think about that, because that's how the brain works. It works with pictures, and this goes very well with children. Sometimes you go in a play. I mean, you see they're gonna walk in a place, or you're gonna fall in that place. If you're gonna fall, because the first thing you say you're gonna fall, which is negative, and they don't realize they fall. Sometimes it's apparent. For example, you sit in a theater and something happened, and you can see people standing up to see what's going on, and the guy in the speaker said, "Please don't stand up." And it happened. Maybe you've seen people sitting, and suddenly they're standing up and they realize they don't have to, and they go back to sit again, because that's how the brain works in pictures in a way. Well, I think I'm trying to conclude here, to draw from here, like speaking to the children, even ourselves, to speak in a positive way, talk to them about the thing they need to do. not the things they don't need to do or they shouldn't do. Well, don't do this, you shouldn't be that, you shouldn't do that. And all those negative words we have to take them out from our language, especially with children, even to ourselves. We need to speak in a positive way. We don't have to be mean to ourselves. Sometimes we do that, and we need to as well to think about the things we need to do, we want to do, the things we like to hear about us. And that's what I want to share with you. I mean, well, it's a great topic, Wayne. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks, Adine. Yeah. It's a quick little story. When I was probably 2 years old, because I live in a winter country, my dad said to me, "Don't put your tongue on that metal post." Or on metal post. Here's an interesting thing. I had never, ever conceptualized putting my tongue on a metal post. So, of course, I had to find out why my dad told me that. If you haven't ever tried that, I did.
Oh, it happened, yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah, especially with children, because the kind of, the realization about, not to do is a bit slow. And how many times you keep telling them, I told you not to do this. And a lot of parents, with little experience how, to deal with children, they don't understand it. And they think the problem is they try to blame it on the child. The child is unruly, or maybe the child is not doing good listening. But it's still to do with how, the brain works. And it goes with it, in a way. So, the great thing to children, to teach children is self-esteem, which draws a lot from how good enough you are, you deserve better, you're smart enough, you're worthy of love and respect, all those, you've done amazing things. It draws a lot of things. That's how they want to see themselves, or what they should be doing, not the thing they shouldn't be doing. That the great things we can teach our children is to grow with self-esteem. And that, it takes a lot, because how you're going to be talking to them is going to be the opposite way. Not a lot of negative words are going to be there, by the way. So going to be a lot of positive in it. And that's the great things, if we could do that. Well, I have children, so I happen to know, being kind of late knowing that, try to reconstruct as well on how I'm dealing with children, how I talk to them. Sometimes it's not easy, but I'm doing my best anyway. So,
For
thanks.
sure. Thanks, Adine. And Toyin, did you want to take us home here?
Okay, Wayne, I'll take it away. Thank you. Thank you, Wayne, for a great topic. Hi, everyone. By the way, just to let you know, Wayne, the BBC currently are not recruiting anyone because unless the job is output critical at the moment, because they're like in massive debt. But once they start recruiting again, I'll let you know, Wayne, okay? I'm sure they'll be very, very happy to recruit you. You have a perfect job for BBC Radio 4, by the way. So just to let you know, but thank you for a great topic.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, I agree with what everyone has said about the power of words and how life and death are in the power of words. We can build up with words and we can break down. But what I wanted to say very briefly was sometimes it doesn't really matter what we say. It is really about how the other person filters what we said and how they've heard what we said. So an example is I said to a colleague, oh, you look really nice today. And it really was genuinely a compliment. And the person turned around and said, thank you. What, just today? So, it's like, it's so difficult sometimes. You mean well, but then the person, they take it, but then they add another meaning to it. So it's how people perceive words and how they filter them and how they receive what you said. And the other thing is, as a person who works with young people, in the room, it's really interesting how young people use words differently. And I don't really mean children, I mean like young adults and teenagers. So a young person might say, in the UK, would say something like, oh, that's sick. And what they really mean is, oh, that's really, really good. They don't actually mean it's sick. And then another word I hear is, what's the other word they say? Oh, sorry, there's another word anyway that they use in a completely different way. Oh yeah, they'll say something like, oh, that's my bad. And what they mean is, that's my fault. So they just use words really differently. And I think that's really interesting. So when I'm with a young person, I always ask, oh, well, I think I know what you mean by that word, but actually, what do you mean? I just want to make sure that I'm in tune with you and I really understand how you use that word. And then the other thing to quickly say is, which has been mentioned, is the way that words have evolved, the way that words that were acceptable before change, and then suddenly they're no longer acceptable. So like in my family, there's lots of mixed marriages and all that. And when I was younger, people used to use the word, oh yeah, they are half caste. And then that became a word that was unacceptable. Then it became mixed race. And then at some stage I was told, someone used the word and then someone said, you can't use the word mixed race, it's dual heritage. And I'm sure that word will change again. And it's a bit like Nikki was referring to the word mental health, which to me is, I'm a counsellor. So to me, that word is, because it's changed so much from what it was, I'm actually okay with that word. But it was interesting to hear Nikki say that actually she still finds that word a bit difficult. So yeah, it's just about sometimes how we perceive words. But yes, I agree, words are just so powerful, really. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for this lovely room. Thank you for everyone, for all you say. I just love it. And thank you, all the organizers, all the contributors. I'm just learning so much and going away with the impression of increase every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Toyin. Yeah, always love what you share. So thank you so much. So yeah, we'll wrap up there. Just a reminder to everybody, 3 p.m. Eastern time in the US. We've got our very own Stuart Wilde with his Adventures in Mindset. So that's 3 p.m. Eastern time in North America. So a little bit later there in the UK. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks, Wayne.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Wayne. Good job.
Thanks, Wayne. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.